On this edition of Defense News Weekly, find out what it's like to fly fighters over the Pacific, see remnants of Iranian-made missiles, and get an up-close look at the Naval Academy's boxing tournament, with in-depth interviews, up-close video, and leading analysis. This is Defense News Weekly. Welcome to Defense News Weekly. I'm Jeff Martin. New legislation has been put forward by two senators to help solve the readiness problems plaguing the Navy. Those problems came to light after two collisions last year that killed 17 sailors. Senators John McCain and Roger Wicker authored the proposed bill that would create a senior Senate-confirmed civilian overseeing ship maintenance, provide funding flexibility, and set minimum requirements to qualify for various at-sea posts. The bill is expected to be folded into this year's National Defense Authorization Act. The Marine Corps wants to make significant investments in precision strike. In fact, they want to double their current investment. According to budget documents, the Corps is looking to spend about $134 million on the High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, commonly known as HIMARS. In addition, the Corps wants to reactivate the 5th Battalion, 10th Marines as a HIMARS unit based on the East Coast. This investment mirrors other Marine Corps initiatives designed to fight a country like Russia or China. With America and North Korea locked in a bitter war of words, missile defense has become quite the trending topic lately. Air Force General John Hyten, the commander of the U.S. Strategic Command, recently provided the keynote address at this year's AUSA Army Air and Missile Defense Forum in Arlington, Virginia. In his speech, he talked about how missile defense is as important to America as nuclear deterrence is. He also laid out what he thinks America needs to have an effective missile defense system that can do what it was designed to do. But perhaps his biggest point was the need for America's military to go fast.
From a global missile defense capability, I think the highest priority, in my opinion, is improved sensors. And we're going to build a new radar in Alaska. Missile Defense Agency is building the LRDR, the Long Range Discrimination Radar in Alaska. That's a critical piece of the puzzle. We need better kill vehicles. We need more reliable kill vehicles on the front end. We need multi-object kill vehicles on the front end of our interceptors. We need more capacity in the interceptors, but we need to work all those things in unison, and those are the priorities that I have. Sensors, better kill vehicles, and then capacity.
Last week marked the Air Force Association's annual Air Warfare Symposium in Orlando, Florida. Defense News was there to cover what Air Force leaders had to say. Here's a look at some of the event's highlights.
Most obvious to everyone here, technology will change the character of war, as it has for our predecessors.
If we're able to embrace the increasing speed of technological advancement and adapt faster than our adversaries, as Charles Darwin put it, it isn't the survival of the fittest as much as it's survival by those fastest to adapt. And as Chief Wright correctly stated yesterday, it's not enough to just adapt. We got to lead if we're going to thrive in the revolution.
We have to draw from the best from outside our institution. Research done outside of national security now dwarfs the amount of research that's done directly for the military. So we have to identify research for its potential to help national security and spin it on into our Air Force.
You've heard people talk about this. I'm not the first one to say it. We're coming to the end of a period where our joint force has dominated the military landscape, with a large part of that being because of the investments that we made in the 80s that gave us an air superiority advantage, that gave us a maritime advantage, that gave us a counter-land advantage that we've taken advantage of for about 25 years.
When we say to our force, be innovative, the code there is it's more tactical and operational, where we're asking the force to be innovative with the tools we've given them and to create new tools, but really in the same theory, the same mechanism that we have today.
So our warfighter's edge is going to be our airmen, and it's going to be for us as leaders to open up, to not be that frozen metal, and to give them opportunities to make that stuff happen. So this is up to us, ultimately. Will we stay in this infinite game, violent extremists to the threat posed by China? Will we find new ways to be able to win? Will we open up our playbook? Will we be vulnerable enough to each other to keep us all here and to allow an environment to flourish where people can bring new ideas?
I sometimes worry that the next daring idea is trying to break through the bureaucracy, that we're close to giving up. That if we don't have some folks who are willing to push against the frozen middle and bring battlefield acupuncture to the point of injury, it won't happen. It's time for us to give these ideas an audience and incubate the most promising innovations. And then we have to take those ideas and integrate them for best effect.
Kadena Air Base in Okinawa has more F-15s than any other aircraft, with about 50 of them assigned to the Pacific Air Base. Both flying and maintaining the aircraft can be a challenge and a roller coaster.
It's a ton of fun. I got into flying because when I was 10, I rode a roller coaster, and I was like, I want to do this for the rest of my life, but I can't get paid to ride roller coasters. So, and then it was Top Gun themed, and I saw the giant statue of an F-14. I was like, oh, I could do that. So then, one thing led to another. Now I'm flying fighter jets.
Captain Brock McGee is a pilot in the 44th Fighter Squadron, one of 2 F-15 units on Kadena Air Base. The aircraft his unit has are old, but that doesn't stop them from flying nearly every day. And that flying isn't like any he did in the United States.
It's much easier to fly out here, really, because we're on an island. So once we get away from the island, we get out over the ocean, nobody cares if we go supersonic at 5,000 feet over the water because there's nobody out there.
A majority of the missions flown by the 44th and its sister squadron, the 67th, are training for air-to-air combat. And they fly those with a variety of aircraft, including the F-35.
If we want to practice a larger type of fight where we're doing, we're protecting a strike package to go in and bomb something, or whatever the case may be, they'll actually go do that, and it's good training for them.
They also fly missions with F-15s from the Japan Air Self-Defense Force, some of which are based in Okinawa.
I did one on the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. It was myself and an instructor pilot from the C-7th, and then 2 F-15s from the the Japan Air Self-Defense Force. And we went and did some tactical intercepts, and it went really well.
Another side to F-15 operations on Kadena is the maintenance. And because of Kadena's location, that can be a challenge.
The biggest portion of it is keeping our airmen trained. That's the hardest part of pushing the mission, because staying overseas in this location that we're in, we constantly get new airmen, and we have airmen leaving. So once we train them up and get the airmen at a proficient rate, they PCS and are moving on to the next base, and we got to train the newer guys up.
But even though maintaining F-15s can be a challenge, especially with the high op tempo, those who work on them are proud of their aircraft, especially when they hear them flying over.
I have a kid. I can't wait till he grow up to see what I do. I think the only time it really bothers me is when my kid is asleep and it's going over and I know he's gonna wake up, but it don't bother me. I love it. I love the sound. I love working on these jets.
To keep up to date with all of our coverage, be sure to visit our Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages. Also be sure to add us on Apple News and other platforms for the latest updates. And coming up, we break down the 2019 defense budget and look at some Iranian-made missiles from Yemen.
Today's program is provided in part by Raytheon, proud partner of FifthDomain.com, the sister site of Defense News, dedicated to all things cyber. Learn more at FifthDomain.com.
The proposed 2019 defense budget is one of the biggest in recent memory. To break it all down, I spoke with Bloomberg government analyst Cameron Luthi. So Cameron, for those that aren't really follow the budget as closely as you and I, what's different about this budget than what we've kind of seen in past budgets?
Well, there are two things that jump out. First is it's a $85 billion jump for 18 and 19. So you get a boost for defense across the board, including defense activities outside of DoD. The second thing that's of interest and makes this somewhat different is the administration came out with their new strategy in the fall. It's not exactly synced up, but the budget does reflect that new strategy.
And so with that, I mean, obviously you have to adjust for inflation, but is this really, we hear from the White House and the administration all the time about how it's such a huge, we're restoring America's military and pouring all this money to it. Is that accurate?
Well, it's fair up to a point. The deal that raised the caps on defense spending is only for 18 and 19. In the out years, in 2020, 2021, the budget would come back down under current law. So it's one of those things where the proof is in the pudding. It's going to be another negotiation in a year and a half from now about whether or not we can increase defense spending. Because if you don't do it consistently year over year, you're not going to realize the full potential of what you're starting this year.
So with all that we kind of see in this budget, people say it's almost a placeholder. What do you say to that?
Well, I think it's a little bit more than a placeholder. Last year, it definitely was a placeholder. Most of the cake was baked before the administration came in. You know how long the lead time is for putting a budget together. The new strategy is reflected to some degree, but there's parts of this budget that are sort of business as usual.
Got it. So with all that, what you've been kind of looking through this budget since it's been released and everything like that, walk me through some of the nuggets you found. Anything particularly interesting or just random that we haven't seen in past ones?
I think one of the biggest nuggets, if you will, is the degree to which some of the R&D is towards the latter stages of the acquisition life cycle for the Army in particular is very heavily oriented towards Russia. Research for Russia, you might say. There's money for long-range precision fires, upgrading MLRS. There's money for comm systems, cybersecurity. We all know the Army network's in bad shape. So that's a nugget you could take away.
Got it. And with all of what we're seeing, President's budget is very much here's my ideas, let's actually start talking and come to the negotiating table. Do you see the budget in its current number being enacted, or do you see it going up or down before Congress finally gets done wrestling with it?
I think that with the new caps and the budget agreement that created those, I think that the top line won't be the argument. There'll be arguments about individual programs, what's going on with JSTARS, what's going on with WIN-T, what's going on with some of the Air Force satellite programs. That's where the argument will be, not on the top line.
And that's different from past years.
Right. I mean, over the last several years, we sort of had this cycle of presidents asking for more than the caps allow, and then Congress going back and forth and finding an agreement that lasts only a couple of years, and then you're right back where you started 2 years later, fighting about the top line.
Another part of this budget trend was OCO, and it's been a fight. You have Mick Mulvaney, who's famously said, the OCO is just a giant slush fund for the Pentagon. Yet OCO was fairly unchanged this year, even under our second real Mulvaney budget in a way. Do you see him jumping down on that anymore and OCO being reformed? Or?
Well, he got part of what he wanted because it's true. The analysis, lots of people around town have pointed this out, there's money in the OCO budget that doesn't belong there. That's really for base requirements. And the administration says the reason that OCO didn't grow is because with more room in the base, they took about $20 billion out of OCO and moved it into the base. That's the right thing to do from a good government standpoint. That's a win for Mulvaney. Is he satisfied? Probably not.
Knowing Mulvaney, he won't be happy until almost the entire OCO budget is gone with looking at all with what he said. But as we kind of wrap up a little bit here, with what we see in this budget, we hear from Deputy Secretary Shanahan, 2020, that's the masterpiece budget. What do you think might be different in the masterpiece, so to speak? Will it reflect certain strategies, certain reviews? What are you seeing?
One of the things that we're going to be watching is the degree to which emerging technologies get more money. I mean, put your money where your mouth is. So artificial intelligence, autonomy, and those two in combination, air, land, sea, all of those arenas. I think directed energy is another area. There's a big jump in the Navy's directed energy budget this year, and I would expect more of that in the 2020 budget.
Well, that gets back to the whole Pentagon argument, which has been going on for years, of readiness versus modernization, readiness versus modernization. Some would argue that every money you invest in AI is one less tank coming out of a modernization line, or one less aircraft rolling off the line. What do you say to that?
Well, it's a trade-off that's been discussed since the previous administration, when Hagel was SecDef, this capability versus quantity argument. And he leaned heavily on increasing the technological capability, not increasing the size of the force. President Trump has pushed for more increases in end strength, but not as much as some people might have anticipated. I think the thrust coming out of the Pentagon next budget is going to be all about high tech.
Great. Cameron, thanks for talking with us. We really do appreciate it.
Great to be with you.
In a secret warehouse in Washington, D.C., the Pentagon has weapons found in Saudi Arabia and Yemen that have been traced back to Iran. Daniel Woolfolk recently visited the site and shows us those weapons and the detective work that experts use to verify their origin.
It's no secret that Iran is covertly arming fighters in several different conflicts. But what we have here in this warehouse in Washington, D.C. is evidence. I'll show you several different weapons, and I'll point out exactly how DoD experts have acted as detectives to trace these weapons back to Iran. These are the remains of 2 Qayyam missiles, and one of them actually flew into Riyadh in December. You may have seen that on the news. I'm going to start from here on the top to show you these valves, which are in a specific pattern that American experts recognize to be Iranian. The Qayyam doesn't have fin stabilizers, which is a dead giveaway right off the bat, but also these wind bolt covers. As you can see on the diagram, there are 3 bolts, and even with all this wreckage, experts can point them out. 1, 2, and 3. Defense officials believe this missile was disassembled, smuggled into Saudi Arabia, and reassembled in the field right before it was launched. And what's the dead giveaway? Well, right here you see this really nice factory welding, and over here, this is field welding. It looks a lot different. And now we're here at the navigation system, which is the brains of the missile. There are some dead giveaways, specifically markings from companies that work directly under the Iranian Ministry of Defense. And like any good industrial producer, they leave their markings, they leave their brand on the circuit board. And even better, there's a quality control sticker in the back that's dated 2015. And now let's get down to the ground. This is the Tufan anti-tank guided missile. If you're a ground pounder, you might remember the TOW missile. This is based off of that. One distinct feature in the American TOW is that the motor nozzle is flared out. In this Iranian one, it comes straight out. Experts know that whenever something is reverse engineered, when it's made again, it's made in a much more simple form. Now let's go check out a drone. This is the cost of one drone. The Yemeni government tried to say that they made it themselves, but not so fast. We know it's Iranian made. And the first giveaway, it's the design. Americans know that this is an Iranian-made drone. And secondly, it's a serial number. It's 2 digits, a dash, and 4 digits. And that's something that's uniquely Iranian. Third thing, it's this vertical gyroscope, which is also uniquely Iranian. Let's get on the water. That blast was made with a semi-autonomous boat that has a warhead inside of it. Now, the boat is not remarkable in and of itself, but here we have the guts. That's the guidance computer. In a dead giveaway, you don't have to be a genius to figure this one out. The keyboard's in Farsi. And inside of the casing is 2 brains. This is an actual computer on this side, and on this side, this is what controls the autonomous vehicle. And back here, this is the camera that guides it. It's an off-the-shelf camera. The Department of Defense wants this information out there. In fact, they've had representatives from more than 60 countries tour the artifacts. You might be wondering why Iranian manufacturers stamp their names on the products. One defense official told us that it's common practice, but he'll be curious to see if it keeps on happening in the future. Reporting from Joint Base Anacostia Bowling, I'm Daniel Woolfolk.
Coming up, a look at the Naval Academy's boxing tournament and find out why a retired Navy SEAL just now got his first tattoo. On this week's Money Minute, personal finance expert Jeanette Mack offers her tips on choosing life insurance.
If you're young and just starting out in your career, or even a few years in, the last thing on your mind is life insurance. As an active duty service member, if you're eligible, you're automatically enrolled in Service Members Group Life Insurance, or SGLI. The thing is, you lose SGLI coverage 120 days after you leave the service. Luckily, there are life insurance options outside of the military, and knowing why and when to have it is key. As you transition from military to civilian life, keeping coverage is very important. If you're married, or maybe you're looking forward to starting a family, these are even more reasons to have insurance. If your family depends on your income or shares joint accounts with you, a life insurance policy is a great way to keep them covered. Homeownership is another reason to be insured. According to the Census Bureau, the average cost of a home in the U.S. is over $200,000. That could be tough for one person to pay down. That's where being insured can really bring peace of mind. Beyond home ownership, any loans or debts you owe could impact your family. Look into life insurance as a way to give them a strong financial foundation and a secure future.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more defense news coverage, be sure to visit our website at defensenews.com and subscribe to our Early Bird Brief, delivered to your inbox every weekday morning to get you ready to start the day. And coming up, a ringside seat at the Naval Academy's boxing tournament. Peanut butter and jelly, peanut butter and chocolate, sailors and tattoos. Some things just seem to go together, don't they? But retired Navy SEAL Boyd Renner, who served for 20 years, managed to refrain from getting inked. Until now. Our own Dustin Diaz traveled to Virginia Beach to find out why the change of heart.
My first tattoo is actually going to be of some lungs. Beautiful drawing by Frank Romano. He is going to place the evidence, my wife's encapsulated DNA, in the red roses that you'll see on these lungs of this tattoo. So yeah, it's just a way for her to be with me forever. We've been married 25 years. We've probably been together 27. And of course, half of that I've been deployed.
It was trying at times, especially when he was a young SEAL and he volunteered for every trip there was, and he was gone all the time.
She's had to do that by herself, dealing with cystic fibrosis. So she's my hero.
Young children cannot pronounce cystic fibrosis, and it always comes out 65 roses. So roses are symbolic to cystic fibrosis. And so that's what we chose. It was something that kind of embodied our journey together with living with CF. He's kind of like my rock, actually. He keeps me grounded.
Her DNA is what makes her her, and to have that encapsulated and placed inside a tattoo for other people to see, and it's just powerful. I'm pretty fortunate I get it done by Frank Romano, and then Tommy here at Sandbridge Tattoo. I can't thank them enough for letting us use their place, and I look forward to sharing it with everybody. She's what inspires me, and that's what Everence is all about, is what inspires you, and what do you want to have with you forever. And for me, it's my wife.
Naval Academy students are midshipmen on active duty in the U.S. Navy. While at school, the midshipmen learn to become professional officers of competence, character, and compassion, even while taking swings at one another. Navy Times' Jeff Zuzulowicz has more.
When midshipmen enter the U.S. Naval Academy, one of the requirements they face is about as far away from a classroom as you can get. It's in the boxing ring, where about 24 of the Academy's best pugilists squared off recently to trade some leather at the 77th Annual Brigade Boxing Championships.
Yeah, that was my first fight. Well, okay, it was my third fight, but it was my first one in brigades. Like, we went straight to the finals because there's just 2 of us in that weight class. When I first went out there, and I could hear all the people in the crowd and such, I knew that, again, it was going to be me versus me out there more than it was going to be me versus her. So I zoned in and thought, what am I going to do to win this, no matter what I could hear? And obviously it was kind of scary once I started hearing people. Anytime you got hit, you're like, oh, shoot. Wasn't that as bad as everyone else makes it? But I just kept thinking to myself that it's me and I can do this.
I think when you get a square punch in the face, you just remember that, okay, they hit me, they got a point, now I have to get 5 points on them. I usually get really motivated when I get punched in the face, and that's when I start charging, making them pay for what they did to me. I think the hardest part about boxing is going to practice every day, ready to work. Because before that we have practice in the morning at 05:30, and then a bunch of classes. Average midshipman takes about 18 credits. So it's really, really easy to have a tough day. But then you have to come to the gym with your game face on, ready to work, ready to help others, and also ready to ask others for help.
Boxing has a long tradition in the Navy. Events at the Academy date back to 1865, and the sport took off in earnest in the 1920s.
It's such a rich tradition, and that even though I was scared today when I was going out there, I was honored and humbled by the fact that I could be a part of something with such a rich tradition here.
For many at the event, it was a chance to test their mettle on a big stage.
It helps us, midshipmen at the Academy, to learn how to box because we're going to be fighting. And maybe in different roles, maybe not all of us will be like hand-to-hand combat, but again, with that whole thing about where you have to push yourself past what you think you can do, it makes you more comfortable, more confident in what you can do.
For others, it was a chance to hone and show off their hard-earned skills.
I'm prior enlisted as well, so I have some background in what the officers do more or less, and I understand that some of the things they do are completely nerve-wracking. And if anything, boxing is all about nerves. If you can keep control of your nerves in a fight, you pretty much won 75% of the fight right there. The rest is just pretty much you put in the work before, running, training, sparring, and that's that. Honestly, with brigades, it was a fun time, you know? Getting to box in front of my classmates, getting to show them my skills that I've acquired over the years, more or less. It was an amazing time. I mean, boxing is where it's at. It's like probably the best sport out here.
Reporting for Navy Times, I'm Jeff Zazoulias.
That's all we have time for this week, but if you want to see and read more, be sure to head over to defensenews.com. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.